Welcome back to the Curious Mind podcast and the second part of my first session with my client Anna. If you haven't listened to the first part, please go to the description below where I left a link to it. In the first part, Anna has described how the US doesn't feel like home anymore. She also has, based on her experience from childhood on, developed the habit of moving every few years. I encouraged Anna to question this habit and to see if she still needs it or if it's time to get comfortable with staying longer in one place. When it comes to decisions like these, I point out that we shouldn't just hope for our gut feeling to tell us what to do. Instead, we also need to take cues from our environment, the people around us, career, and our age as well in order to make life decisions that are meaningful for us. We now jump back into the conversation where Anna describes how uprooted she is from her life in the US and how this disconnect is met with incomprehension by her family of origin.
They would say things like, why aren't you smiling or in a good mood? Like you should smile more. Don't be like, like them in Central Europe, not
Yes.
smiling. And
Yeah,
it's
Europeans
just,
don't smile much, right?
yeah, no. And I heard this term recently called toxic positivity.
Oh, interesting.
And I felt, yeah, I know. And I'm like, okay, because we always hear about, toxic negativity, but where it's just like people are just so overtly positive that it just collapses on you. And that's how America can be at times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, people do. Sorry.
mhm. I got defensive at this woman uh, at the store when I was living there. I went to the cashier and I was paying for my items, and the woman, she was so friendly and she said, "Oh, I like your jacket." And I said, "What? Why?" Like I got so defensive of this poor woman.
Yes.
And then I realized, like, oh yeah, she's just trying to be nice. Like that happens. There's customer service skills here.
Yes.
So I work but there were moments like that where I was just like, what? And I felt like, God, I'm not acting in the correct way.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And just as a side note, for there might be some people in the audience who don't know, but in contrast to what we get from movies and series from the US, the normal experience in the public in the US is that people are very, very friendly. At least
Very,
that's my
yeah. And I'm
experience.
from the Midwest.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so it's just
So
like,
people are not rude, and even when I was in New York
yeah,
and where people said, "Oh, New Yorkers are so rude," even there people were super friendly most of the time.
yeah. Compared to
Yes.
here, it's like, what? That's no problem.
Oh, in Europe,
And
this is weird. It's considered weird, kind of this American
yeah,
way of just commenting on something. Oh, nice
yeah,
colors, nice this, nice that. Just
yeah.
casual chit chat in a very friendly way.
I don't behave like that here in public.
Hmm.
Like like right now, of course I'm being open with you, smiley, whatever. But outside, I catch myself not. I'm so much part of
Yes,
the environment.
yes,
Yeah, I don't
yes. And this is
smile.
a normal process that we do, right? We blend in with time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let us go a little bit back to what we had before. So if I cannot rely on, on a common sense, because common sense does not apply to me. I'm an immigrant. I live in another country. I have a different background. So there are not many signs that tell me automatically how to behave,
Mm-hmm.
which means I have to build my life anew. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, maybe in school, maybe at university, there would have been some markers that tell me which
Mm-hmm.
person to engage with and which not. So that it's kind of prepared a little bit in which direction to go. When I'm away, when I'm outside, it's all up to me. I can connect with anyone I
Mm-hmm.
like.
Yeah.
I can have my life as much as I in the way that I like. I can change jobs and so on. So this is one of the advantages, but that I'm not in a family system or a kind of a tribe or
Mm-hmm.
community where I would go in a more specific direction. It's up to me. So that is
Mm-hmm.
freedom, but that is also, of course, complexity. But that is, I think, the situation that you are in, which means when you think about who you are or who you want to be in the next years and which person you want to develop in, I
Hmm.
think that you're faced with kind of uh, the obvious situation that you have to decide that more or less
Yeah.
in the decision making progress while you go to sense the resonance within if this feels right, if it encourages you to move on in that direction, or if you want to change. So it's a lot of freedom that you are confronted with.
Yeah.
If you could choose just, the way that you reflect nowadays, in which direction would you take your life? If you forget about, the habits that you have acquired also now abroad, and you look at your next 10 years uh, in as a clean plate.
Hmm. Like, um, how do I want to behave? You mean, or like my goals?
Well, in
Or,
terms of identity, right? This is one of the
hmm.
questions that you've had in the beginning. In terms of identity,
Yeah.
where would I like to settle? As what kind of person would I like to settle? Where do I take my motherhood, my relationship,
Hmm.
my work, and so on?
Yeah, I think staying here, being with my partner, who makes me very, very happy, and just building a life with him, because I'll have to rebuild once again,
Mhm.
if we decide to take it further, which I think we want to, then I'll have to adjust my identity again. But it's for something positive. It's like, okay,
Yes.
we're going somewhere good. But still scary. And I think if we stay like a team, like a little family, it doesn't really matter so much where we live.
Hmm.
It'll be fine.
Yes.
That's what I'm hoping. That
Okay.
I'll
And
have that.
let's relate that to the other question that you had. Like, how should I deal with my, by now, a little bit estranged family?
Yeah.
And here to forget that there are scripts. Now, they believe that there is a script, and the normal script is the one that moves away is responsible for keeping up the connection.
Yes. Yes.
That is the script for the
Yes.
people who stay, right? It
Mm-hmm.
is not yours. Now, if you forget about that this is their perspective, how would you like to frame the connection between you and your family? And also, and maybe this is easier to reflect, how would you like the relationship of your son to your family in the
Mm-hmm.
US to be?
Yeah. I want them to be more connected because they're great people, and my son loves them, and I would like them to be involved more. I would love for them to come and visit me.
Hmm.
I've gone back many a times as a single mom traveling alone with a kid to go see them, but
Yeah.
they've never done that for me. And they always have some excuses, but in the end, it's like, come on,
Are there any
been here for
restrictions in terms of health or financial
no,
restrictions that would keep them
maybe some
from?
financial ones at times, but then they have money for other things, and you're
Uh-huh,
like,
uh-huh.
well, that could have been a trip to here,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so I wouldn't. I think that they are scared to come here because they don't want to see that it looks good. I think that they want to feel that they're right. I should never have left.
Hmm.
Um, and where I'm living now, this is just temporary, and it's not a perfect life for me. Yeah.
Yes. That is interesting because so when we come to the topic of how to deal with them, right? How to relate, how to communicate, and so on. So
Yeah.
uh, it brings up the question for me: how frank, how open do you want to be in your communication with them? Because again, we keep in mind that you're approaching your 40s.
Mm-hmm.
It is you're not a teenager. You're not a mid 20s someone who is trying new things and then
Right.
back and so on. You know that you have settled for a different way of life. and that
Mm-hmm.
for sure you will not just move in 2 years back to
Mm-hmm.
the US and then settle there. So you know these things. And
Yeah.
biographically, you're in a position with a new partner and a stability in life where you could represent that, I think, much more actively than maybe you have done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that is possible with your family?
I think so. I think it's going to be very hard, though. We don't really talk about these types of things,
Mm-hmm.
um, emotional things. Like they, for example, after I separated from my husband, which was a crazy, you know, emotional roller coaster. My family assumed that I would just naturally move back with him.
Right.
And at that time, I wasn't prepared for that. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to stay. And my mom was so angry with me. She didn't talk to me for 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
you
Right.
know?
So you disappointed
So,
her,
yeah.
which is, of course, weird, right? You're going through something,
Yes.
you make difficult
Yeah.
decisions, and then someone else like, oh, you didn't call, you didn't come, you didn't
Yeah.
fulfill our expectations.
Yep. Yep. Because I'm supposed to be the responsible one and do, I never went against my family, for most of my childhood. I was always that really, really like a pleasing kid. Like
Yeah.
whatever mom and dad said, I did it. I was never trouble for them.
Yes.
And and then when I became an adult and I started to have my own voice, I'm just like an anomaly. They don't get me.
Right. So how does it make you feel that such important topics have not been discussed? The way that you change, the decisions that you make, that they
Yeah.
should or have to accept who you are now and not dwell so much in the past of the image that they have of how nice of a teenager you were.
Yeah. It's oh gosh, I wish I could have this conversation with them. I really do. I don't know if I'm prepared for it. I don't know if they're prepared for it.
Hmm.
They still make jokes like, "Oh, you were so cute," and then you stopped being cute at the age of 21 because that's the age I got married. You know,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And like, well, and my mom cried on the day I got married. She doesn't know that I know, but I saw her out the window and she was crying, and
Yeah.
so I know, like, I was a disappointment.
Hmm. Right. So that is it makes relatively clear, I think, what their expectation and what their view of you is. What would you like to do if you forget
For my
your sensibilities about what they think or what you should do and so on? What would you like to do? What would you like to say to them?
To them that that I want you to just feel happy for me to finally admit that I'm I'm in a place that I feel good
Hmm.
and I'm with a partner who makes me feel really good and is a great person, that I'm trying really hard, that I work hard, because sometimes I feel that they don't think that I do work hard.
Hmm.
It's another aspect of that. Because I do the type of work that they're not familiar with, so they don't understand what
Hmm.
goes into that.
Yes.
Um, and to not compare me to my sister, who she's wonderful and I love her, but she and I have different family situations. She's married with kids, a house, and she
Hmm.
does work that they understand, and they always compare the two of us. Yeah, so I would want them to know it hurts my feelings.
Yes. What is interesting to me is that what you said right now, it sounds like you would like this message to be received. It doesn't
Yeah,
sound like a kind of a discussion in the sense that you would like to hear what they think about you. It sounds like I want you to know this.
yeah,
How do you feel about just the idea of maybe sending them a letter or, an email, or I don't know how they communicate?
yeah.
Because that would be a statement. That would not be a pseudo conversation, like sit
That's
down and
true.
listen. want to talk to.
Hmm.
Is that something that you could imagine? How does it resonate
I
with
mean, yeah, that is something I think I could do in the future. Maybe not now, but
you? Yeah.
I'll warm up to it. But yeah, I could do something like that. I mean, I I generally try to be as open as I can with people, and I don't want them to feel like I'm being dishonest
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. I'm trying to be very forthright. And I think that if they knew this stuff, maybe our conversations would be easier, you know, because every conversation we have, they kind of imply that they'd like me to move back or something. And I think
Yes.
that's why kind of stopped on my end of reaching out to them, like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk, or like let's have a Skype date.
Mm-hmm.
But they also don't reach out to me, and then I know the next time I talk to them, they'll say like, you never send messages anymore.
Yes.
You never contact us. I'm like, well,
Because you're responsible,
yeah,
right? You're responsible
yeah,
for that. Yes.
it's
Mm-hmm.
always on me, and it's 50-50. I feel, it is
Yes.
partly, but also they have to also
Yes.
put it forth.
It's
They're
kind of
angry that they have to do that. They're angry at me, I think, that they
yes.
have to.
And this is something there is something important that they don't understand, which is your perspective, and this is probably due to the lack of having that experience, right? Of being
Yeah,
the one that moved away and then being confronted by people who stayed and ask them, hey, why don't you
yeah,
call, why don't you visit, as if you have
yeah,
nothing else to do, and
yeah,
the only vacation that you have is to have, in order to plan pleasantry trips to
right.
satisfy the family's expectation. So they probably have not made, to this extent, the experience that you've made. And maybe this is something they need to learn from you,
Yeah,
how that
yeah.
is.
I would love to have a conversation with them. I would love to have a conversation with my brother. I haven't spoken to my brother like a year,
Mm-hmm.
maybe longer. Like we have no, I don't have a brother sister connection with him. And there's no, again, we didn't have a falling out. He's an easygoing guy. We could completely have that, but he just feels like, well, this is gone, so that's it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we have so much modern technology and ways to communicate. Why is this a problem in my family? Other families, I see that they can do this. They can communicate, and mine cannot.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we speak for now in very brief terms about. Of course, there's a lot of complexity to that. But what what I would like to convey is, I think that you are in a position that many people have, that many people are in, which is in similar circumstances, that we have not given ourselves the permission to grow up from the age that we were in when we, for example, left, or
Mm,
when we dealt with family, which means that I think from the outside, you have a position that is would be more adequate for a someone in the 20s or
mm-hmm.
end 20s
Yeah.
or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And in connection to what we spoke about before, right, that someone in your situation, someone who's an expat who builds their life abroad, right, you are constantly in a position of figuring out, of overcoming the alienation, overcoming the lack of integration in the country where you live in. So you are in constructing mode, right?
Yeah.
And this is what you do because you have to,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't apply this to the family. And I
Yeah.
think because we're somewhat stuck in a time when we felt that there was a more organic give and take between family members, and this is just not happening anymore. So it's somewhat
Mm-hmm.
frozen at a
Yeah.
time that I'm, or where it's frozen in a place that I'm not at anymore.
Yeah.
And the of course there are risks, but in general, I think it's more healthy to think in terms of let me shape this. Just as I constructed the relationships with the friends and people around me here and the new partner that I found, let me take this approach also to my family. They have to see that I'm a different person now, and let me create
Hmm.
that relationship as a different person, not the daughter that said goodbye and will come back as the same daughter that she was.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good way to put that. That I have to like be more active with my who I am and my role in relation to my family, to let
Mhm.
them know like this is who I am now,
Yes.
and for them to accept that. Yeah.
What is for you in the way to take such a more active stand? Because I know it's not easy. It doesn't feel right.
No,
What is, how would you put it? What is in the way?
I don't know. Like I feel like, well, first off, I definitely need to go and visit them. It's been long enough. I need to take
Hmm.
my son. Of course, I'm waiting for this, pandemic situation to.
Yes.
But after that, I would like to go back and just have these talks with them. I think that they need to hear that. I would love for them to meet my partner so that they can see
Mm.
and they can trust, like, oh yeah, you are with a good person.
Yes.
Because
Uh, Again, I personally, I'm a fan of sometimes writing messages, emails, or letters
mm-hmm,
because I think that if in such a situation you would open up in a form of a conversation, a direct conversation, I think they're not prepared, or they would not be prepared,
no,
and they would not know
yeah,
exactly what to say, and then there would be this kind of
they
awkward,
get defensive. Yeah,
okay, let's have lunch, something like
yeah,
that. So,
yeah,
and possibly the advantage of a letter could be that it can sit with them for a
mm-hmm,
while, and they have discussions about it at home, and
mm-hmm,
they could reflect on it and integrate it and process it to a certain extent.
yeah,
And if ideally, this, if the letter is kind of worded in a kind way so that it's not, uh, doesn't have to make them defensive or so, I think that there's a chance that they, when the conversation happens, when the visit happens, that they could be prepared emotionally, but also
mm-hmm,
with words, because they have thought about
mm-hmm,
it in words, they have communicated to each other, your parents, for example, or your siblings, with words. So there is a pathway to a communication.
mm-hmm. No, it's a good idea. It's fair to them as well. Ti gives them time and space to kind of understand what
Hmm.
I'm throwing their way.
Yes.
Yeah, I think, that would be a smart thing to do, to let them know. I don't know if I'm ready just yet to do it, but yeah, I
Right.
don't
It
know.
has to
I
be at
get
the right time.
nervous with it. Yeah, just because like I said, most of my life, it's always been like, well, don't challenge what mom and dad say or
Hmm.
whatever. And,
Yes.
it's different now.
Okay, so
So,
we have gone into this topic of, I mean, we started from the topic of identity and where do I belong and where do I stay, and I made some
hmm.
comments and you made some comments on that, and then we came to the family topic that, as far as I remember in our pre-conversation, you mentioned that you have not thought about it deeply, or you have not kind of challenged your position on this for a longer time,
Hmm.
maybe.
Yeah.
So how was it for you to have a conversation like that?
Oh, it's this is the first time I've ever done anything like this, and it's um, it's good. I feel like some weight is lifted off.
Hmm.
I'm still a bit like hesitant, like nervous, because I'm not used to. Also, I'm also not used to the focus being completely about myself.
Hmm.
Like if I was with a friend right now, at some point the conversation then would end up like, well, let's hear about your story, and
Right.
then yeah. So this has been a strange experience, but in a good way.
Uh-huh.
Like I should like feel comfortable talking about these things. You know, it's part of my identity. It's who I am. So, you know,
Yes.
yeah.
What I often say to clients, especially in the beginning when they have not done any sort of consultation, counseling, therapy, or anything, is that it's their time where they can give themselves permission to be selfish and just to think about themselves. And
Yeah.
I mean, I often make suggestions, obviously, just as in this conversation, but it's just meant as I'm throwing something out there. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
come from an authoritative position because, frankly, I don't know you well enough, right? I know situations that resemble yours from my perspective. So this is where
Mm-hmm.
I kind of throw in something that, from experience, has worked for other people. So this aspect changes with time. When I get to know someone deeper, then certainly my comments are also more adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning, it's just what it is. It's a way of getting to know each other, uh, for me to probe and to make suggestions and see how you react to that. But that is my impression as well, that it's uh, that you're not completely comfortable with this position of
Yeah.
this attention. I feel like you want to be more dialogical and
Yeah.
less kind of self revealing or self kind of
Yeah.
expressing, right?
Exactly. Like I've never had therapy before, so I've always had to analyze things myself
Hmm.
and watch psychology videos or whatever, and then I'm creating this narrative. Um, but to just to like let go and or even just to cry about something, it's really like if I feel like I'm gonna start opening up too much, you probably can't see it, but I'm rubbing my fingers together. I'm
Mm.
trying to like not like let go too much because I'm so used to keeping it inside.
Mm. Right. So this is a strange experience of
Yeah.
there is no fine modulation of the knob, like how much, or the valve of how much to open it up. How does it work? The
It-
fine tuning.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So,
So this is a great way, also with trusted friends and maybe the partner, when you discover that there is a possibility that with practice that there is some sort of a skill, the skill of a healthy opening up that is not threatening to
mm,
me, or I don't
mm-hmm,
feel that I lose control or I put things in such an awkward way that I alienate those close
mm-hmm,
people around me, uh, because that gives me just an additional layer of dealing in a trusted way with people around me when I develop that skill more and more, and there is an
mm-hmm.
understanding of how much is adequate right now in that situation.
Yeah.
Reading the signs, asking if things are okay. So, for example, with partner or friend, to ask, is it okay if I talk for 20 minutes and I just use you as a resonance board,
Mm-hmm,
sounding board, for our conversation? And is it okay if you only ask questions to clarify, but kind of keep back your position, and then when I'm
mm-hmm.
done, I would love to hear your position and your understanding, your interpretation. So it's a little bit of an artificial space, but it allows me to, again, to develop a field in my immediate surrounding where I can develop my own thoughts, which is, I think, such a healthy thing to do. And it's not so common because mostly we are in the mode of give and take. What do you think about this? Oh, this is
Yeah.
what. And then I withdraw again because it's
Mm-hmm,
the game as it is played is the ball is on the other side, and then they have to say something, and then I have to say something. So
mm-hmm.
that I kind of I make those connections in my mind, that I think, oh, what the other person said made me realize something about myself, but it's not my time to
Yeah.
speak. So I hold it back. Um, so, yes, so this is just a
Yeah.
general kind of recommendation to open up those spaces, and to give
Mm-hmm.
myself permission to go in that direction, outside of those highly artificial context as counseling or therapy session is. Well, this would be it for today. I
Okay.
thank you so much for opening up about your topic and your glimpses into your world. Um, you just commented a little bit in those past sentences on what your impression is. Can you sum it up for us and the audience what the process was for you?
It's like having, like you said, like the spotlight is completely on you, so I feel a bit more vulnerable, but at the same time comforted to know that, like, well, you're guiding me through it, and that helped, because I'm not used to these types of conversations
Mm-hmm.
and for such a long period of time. And it was really refreshing to have something different like that, to look at things in a different way, to not always keep everything hidden and suppressed, to kind of like let it out.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice. I think more and more people should have those moments.
And can you describe what is good about that? Why is it? I mean, suppress is already a negative term, but why is it
Yeah.
good to let it out and to speak about
So
it?
I think if you talk about something, you have ownership over it, right?
Mm.
It's not scary anymore, or I don't know, like some crazy monster or whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's you're accepting it, and there's something really healthy about that. And yeah, I think it's really good, and I want to keep going further with exploring some of these issues about myself.
Please join us for the next episode, where I continue to explore with Anna the topics of isolation, reestablishing a closer connection with her family, self identity, and developing a new feeling of home within herself.